And now, suspense.
And welcome back to this week's haul. And in this haul, I got some pretty good bangers in this one. So let's just get right into it. First up, we have Death on the Nile. A little bit of backstory. I remember watching the first one, Murder on the Orient Express, and not really being super impressed by it. I ended up giving it a second chance and enjoyed it a lot more upon rewatch. And then I, got into wanting to watch more of the character of Hercule Poirot. So we watched Death on the Nile, and I ended up enjoying this one probably around the same. I feel like I liked the characters in this one a little bit more than the first one. I feel like the first one, the characters were kind of surface level and a little bit bland. And I feel like that's because the cast from the first film were pretty much all recognizable faces. So when that happens, you don't really get a chance to really care about a lot of the characters, and they just expect you to be like, oh, Willem Dafoe. Oh, Michelle Pfeiffer. We don't need that much story about them. When actually you do. So I feel like a lot of the characters were a bit more fleshed out in this one. And so even though they're not as recognizable faces, you still get to learn a little bit more about them and more about their motivation of why they might have wanted a person on the ship dead. So in that sense, I think I enjoyed this one a little bit more. And as I'm filming this, A Haunting in Venice, the third film in this series, has already come out. And I actually really enjoyed that one as well. It has more of a horror element to it. And funny enough, when watching the trailer for the first time in theaters, I didn't even know that it was part of this series. I was just thinking like, that looks exactly like the character from Murder on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile. And then I realized, oh, okay, this is the third in that series. Hopefully we get a 4K for that release, because right now it only has a Blu-ray. Typical trend that the studios are doing, toss out a Blu-ray, and if it gets enough traction, if it gets enough sales, we'll put out a 4K for it. Hopefully that happens, because I would hate to have two films in a trilogy be 4K and then the last one only be Blu-ray. But if that's the route that it goes, then I'll have to suck it up and just buy the Blu-ray. Next up, an old classic, and I mean very old and very classic, The Ten Commandments on 4K. Very, very good movie. I know a lot of people watch some of these films and think like they're really boring, but I can look at this and see like exactly why it achieved all of the accolades and achieved all of the success. Back in 1956 this released, so it's been getting praise for well over 50 years. And with good reason, because the cinematography of it is unmatched. The special effects for the time are incredible. And the storytelling is great. Everyone does a really good job. It's a very sweeping epic, and we just don't get a whole lot of those nowadays. So this one is another film that I think treads the line perfectly of upgrading the visual and audio quality to the 4K, which warrants a 4K in the first place, but still keeps the integrity of the film by still maintaining the look, what it looked like when it first released in 1956, because there are some people out there who have a lot of issue with people making older films so clear that there's absolutely zero film grain, which I personally don't have a problem with, as long as it doesn't look cartoony. Like, obviously you're gonna have to do a lot of filtering and color correction to get rid of that film grain to make the film look more modern, and in that sense you lose a lot of the feel of the film. But there are times too where they can clean up a lot of the grain in the picture and just make it look really good, and it still keeps the integrity of it. So I feel like The Ten Commandments as well as The Bird, I think those two films so far that I've seen do the best job of walking that fine line.
That is cinema.
Next up is a movie based on a ridiculous true story. And even though it is ridiculous and it had to be done in this sense, Black Klansman with Jonathan David Washington. Yeah, John David Washington. I said his full government, but whatever. So John David Washington plays Ron Stallworth, the first African-American police officer in Colorado Springs. And so he has to deal with, the other officers kind of discriminating against him and just kind of like, treating him in a certain way because he's the only colored guy around. Pretty normal for that time.
Racism, let's do that shit, huh? Come on, if you're racist and you know it, clap your hands. What the fuck, bro?
Then he gets in contact with members of the KKK in that area, and they want to have a meeting with him. And obviously he can't do that because, obvious reasons.
Oh my God, why is he black?
And so they get Adam Driver's character to portray him while he's with the Klan members in real life. He'll play Ron Stallworth. And because of how ridiculous the premise is, I feel like the way they did it, it had to be done in a way where it is more comical, but they also still touch on a lot of serious issues in a way that pays respect to it. I thought it was done very well. Very entertaining movie. Next up, we have my favorite musical, Les Mis. Don't really like musicals. I'll say that now. There are very few musicals in my collection, and those are ones that I feel are done in a way that I find very entertaining and the songs are good. But with Les Mis, I remember first wanting to watch this because of how good it looked. Cinematography and the filmmaking looked absolutely amazing, and I was correct. I think this is probably like one of the best looking movies that I've ever seen. I think it's gorgeous. And another thing I love about the movie that a lot of people kind of find off-putting is that they actually sing on camera in this movie. They don't do the typical musical route where they, sing in a studio and have perfect vocals and then they just, dub it or lip sync to it while they're filming. All of the singing is done on camera by the actors. So obviously there are some weird inflections sometimes, or there are some notes that just aren't hitting right. There are some actors who aren't that great. Russell Crowe, I'm talking about you. But I think that's what makes the film so unique and so great to me. I just really wish that the director of this movie would have gone out on a high note, because this is the same guy that did Cats. And every time I think about it, I'm just like, how do you go from making a masterpiece like Les Mis to a disaster piece like Cats? Next up is probably one of my favorite releases of 2023. We have The Mist, still sealed. I have yet to have the time to sit down and watch it. I love the slipcover. I absolutely love the slipcover. I think the colors and the black just go with it so well. It kind of fits the feel of the movie. Based on one of Stephen King's novels, a mist comes through town and a bunch of the townspeople are stuck in a grocery store, and then a bunch of crazy monsters come out and they just have to survive. Things go full Lord of the Flies, and if you've seen Lord of the Flies, you know what I'm talking about. Obviously, this movie does not have a very uplifting ending, and I think it's a fantastic movie. It even comes with the black and white version, which I'm very excited to check out. But I feel like this is how you do a set like this. A collector's edition like this with an awesome slipcover, 4 discs, and for like a really good price. It was only like $20 when it released, and then it got dropped down to like $12 on Black Friday. Like, that is how you do a release. They're gonna put out a movie and charge like $30. I want the director's cut on the damn 4K. I want a slipcover. I want a case where they don't stack discs on top of each other. Like, if Lionsgate can come out with something like this for a really good price and looks good, everyone else should be able to do it. This is only my 3rd film from the Criterion Collection. That is The Others. I absolutely love this movie. I think it's fantastic. The 4K restoration, I think, does a very good job. The score in this is haunting, which it totally fits, and it's great. And then it still keeps the look of how I remember watching it for the first time. Feels like it's warranted that it gets a 4K. This is one of those ones that I had to pick up day one just because I love the movie. I admittedly am not a huge fan of Criterion, and let me tell you why. One, not everything comes in a box set, and they still charge you the same exact price, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. The only other 2 films that I own on Criterion are Ghost Dog, Way of the Samurai, because it was the only way I could watch it on Blu-ray, because for that it was just had a very obscure DVD. And then the Before trilogy, that was the only way I could own all 3 movies on Blu-ray, because before that, the first 2 were on DVD, and only Before Midnight was on Blu-ray. This was another one that I just had to get because I have been pretty impressed with the 4K restorations of Criterion, and that's where I give them credit, is that although I am pretty weary of the prices and everything, I can always say that so far they've done a really good job. The only thing that I don't like about this is definitely the packaging. When I first saw it online, it did look like it maybe had some kind of box set. Maybe it does somewhere, I don't know. This looks very plain. Artwork on here is absolutely gorgeous, but you see this right here, what we're looking at? There's a lot of glare. And that's because there's no box with it. It's just plain and white, and that also gives off more glare. And that's the other thing that I've never liked about Criterion is the cases. I think they just look very cheap.
What did he say?
See, look at that. See how this is like matte and it looks gorgeous? If they would have like gave us a matte or even a glossy slipcover, the artwork on this would stand out a lot more. But as it stands, you lose a lot of that because of the glare. Unless you're like in a very dim room, But yeah, that's like I said, that's one of the things that I've never really cared about Criterion is that the packaging to me has always looked this. If it doesn't have a box set, the packaging to me has always looked very cheap. You're charging people $40-$50 for that. Maybe I'm just not a film lover. I don't know. That's always been my gripe with Criterion, and I can't like justify owning a bunch of them for that reason. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this week's Blu-ray physical media 4K haul, and I hope you enjoyed. Catch you in the next one.